Vince Colganese, joined of the Daily Caller, joins us. Vince, how you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much, as always, for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Chuck Ross writing for you guys about Dick Durbin going after Stand Your Ground. He wants to hold hearings, and now apparently he has sent hundreds of letters to all types of organizations asking about their relationship with ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, right?
That's right. Yeah, he sent these last week, and their goal is to try. It looks like to try and to drive a wedge between organizations that support ALEC broadly and the organizations themselves and ALEC. So, at this point, he's kind of claiming, like, look, we just are opening this up for comment. Any company or any organization that donates money to ALEC, we just want to hear back from you. Do you support Stand Your Ground laws? And we're going to include that commentary in a hearing in September. The problem, though, is it's either one, it looks like Durbin, who is obviously very opposed to Stand Your Ground laws, is either trying to intimidate these guys away from being associated with ALEC or doing what a lot of, what you see sometimes in push polls, for instance.
Right.
You just go forward and you're like, hey, if you knew that this guy was beating his wife, would you want to associate with him? And that seems to be the tenor of these letters.
All right. Now, again, my first response is to just laugh at the absurdity of this. But this is serious. This is a sitting U.S. senator engaging in tactics that, look, I know this is an overused comparison, Vince, but one might say this is a little McCarthy-esque, right? Are you now, or have you ever been a supporter of Stand Your Ground?
Yeah, exactly. And it's definitely about trying to create a separation and to make ALEC as an organization something that people hold in contempt. It seems pretty clear. I mean, this is not like he's going into a hearing to talk about self-defense or Second Amendment rights. What they're going to talk about is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how evil is Stand Your Ground. That's sort of going to be the tenor of this hearing. It's obviously, and they're trying to, in advance of it, drive a wedge between organizations that support the American Legislative Exchange Council, which, by the way, is a group that's composed of legislators, businesses, people from all over the country who try and get together to put together what is usually conservative model legislation for various states to pick up. And these are, composed of businesses, experts, people who do have interest in seeing how this legislation gets passed. But ultimately, it's up to the legislators in the individual states whether or not they put this model legislation in place. And in the case of Stand Your Ground, many states have done this because they think that it's reasonable that self-defense doesn't just include being backed into a corner that you can't get out of.
Well, and last week the Florida Sheriff's Association unanimously came out in support of the Stand Your Ground law as it currently stands in the state of Florida.
Right.
Is Dick Durbin going to invite any of those sheriffs up to D.C. to testify, you think?
I find that completely unlikely. I mean, it'd be something to see a hearing on Capitol Hill where you actually had two sides represented. But with that said, this is is Durbin's. It looks to be like Durbin's effort is to try and separate these businesses and these organizations by wrapping them up. For instance, if you're a small business or a big business for that matter, and you support the American Legislative Exchange Council, if all of a sudden you get the promise from a U.S. senator, hey, if you continue to support these guys, we're going to mention you and Trayvon Martin in the same sentence, and we're going to say that you supported killing Trayvon Martin. When in reality, think about this: everyone who's been following the Trayvon Martin-George Zimmerman case knew that by the end of it, that Stand Your Ground had nothing to do with it. That the defense relied on a basic self-defense argument. But Stand Your Ground has been conflated into being exactly why George Zimmerman was able to get away without going to prison, et cetera. And that's basically, the springboard on which Durbin's jumping off.
All right, you know what? I take back my McCarthy-esque comparison. This is more mob tactics, actually, Vince. This is, it's a nice reputation you've built. It'd be a shame if something happened to it.
Yeah. Well, Dick Durbin is the majority whip. He is one of the most powerful lawmakers in the entire country, and the grievances that have been fired, this has seemingly has backfired on him, so much so that you had the Wall Street Journal and the Chicago Tribune editorial pages just absolutely excoriate him for attempting this, because this is the very same guy who said he was outraged by the way the IRS was intimidating people and conservatives, and that this should not happen, and yet here he goes trying to basically say, hey, we're going to publicly shame you for supporting an organization that supports Stand Your Ground, even if it has very little relationship with the Trayvon Martin case.
And he's far from the only one. Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut, when the NRA 500 race was going on, he sent a letter to Fox asking them not to air the race because it would quote give the organization legitimacy.
Yeah, it's kind of unbelievable. But it's just there's definitely an effort in politics, across the board. But there's always an effort in politics to try and demonize organizations. But it seems to me when you start picking on organizations like the NRA, like organizations that have always had such mainstream acceptability and memberships,
right,
that eventually you've just gone way beyond the pale. That you'll have Americans finally responding like, "Hey, wait a second! Like I'm a part of this organization, and I'm not insane at all. This is like a perfectly legitimate organization to be a part of. I believe in my Second Amendment rights."
Well, absolutely, and the thing is, I think they know it. The anti-gun message guide that was written by these three Democratic strategy firms that has been going around the internet over the past week or two. They write about, look, if you're an anti-gun advocate and you're talking to your base, it's okay to bash the NRA. But if you're talking to Mr. and Mrs. Middle America, don't bash the NRA because they have a good opinion of the NRA. And you need to work around that if you're an anti-gun activist. So, they recognize that they're the outliers here. They're the control freaks as opposed to us being the gun nuts.
Yeah, well, it's funny because of course you're with the NRA, and I love the NRA. I just want to do a quick aside. I was reading No Easy Day, the Navy SEAL book about the guys who actually were on the inside raid to kill Bin Laden.
Oh yeah.
And I just finished the book, and it's funny because right after, I'm sure you know this, but right after they killed Bin Laden, they all lit up NRA cigars, and I was like, wow, talk about mainstream. I mean, these are the guys who killed Bin Laden, and they're smoking NRA cigars right after.
Yeah, well, exactly. These are, and since 1871, and I don't take this lightly, since 1871, you have found American heroes within the ranks of the National Rifle Association. And I'll be, again, I said it to start the show, I'll be damned if I'm going to sit by and watch, people trash an institution because of their petty, outdated, outmoded ideas.
Yeah, I think you have a reasonable position on that.
Well, thank you, Vince. You know what? You get to come back on the show just for that.
I appreciate that. That's why I say that stuff.
Listen, man, I really appreciate you coming on the program. You guys are doing fantastic things at the Daily Caller. Congratulations on being bigger than Politico.
Of course. And now we're not – I don't even know who you're talking about anymore. We don't look back.
Exactly. What's your next target?
Who knows? The New York Times, I guess.
Oh. Please, yes. Let me know as soon as you have a columnist who beat. Well, you already probably have columnists who beat Paul Krugman's web traffic, right?
Oh, I sure hope so.
All right, me too. We'll do everything we can to help out. Vince, thank you so much, sir.
Thanks, sir.